Now we are being recorded, so we will kick off this workshop, webinar, whatever you want to call it. So today we're going to be talking about building and selling a startup or startups. I'm Ben, founder, CEO of MicroAcquire. That's MicroAcquire.co. We teach people how to build products without code, automate. We've got a cohort-based course that spits out tons of graduates who build tons of things, and I've seen quite a few of our alumni in the chat. Hello, everyone. Sahil, would you like to introduce yourself and any plugs?
Yeah, totally. So yeah, my name is Sahil. I started a company called Gumroad in 2011. Was sort of on the venture-backed rocket ship path for a few years. Failed at doing that. Turned Gumroad into a normal, profitable business, and have kind of been running it that way ever since. And then in March of this year, raised a crowdfunding round from the sort of the general public, raised $5 million from 7,331 different individual investors in 12 hours. And we're basically spending that on the team, growing the team from 25 to 50, and shipping product and seeing kind of what happens with it. And then I run a rolling fund, so I kind of see a lot of startups, and get to invest in a few of them. And then I have a book coming out with Penguin called The Minimalist Entrepreneur. October 26th, if you want to pre-order it, you can go to minimalistentrepreneur.com. If you want to read the first chapter, DM me, I'll just send it to you in the intro as well. And if you don't like it, don't buy it.
Good plug. I like that. Yeah, and I should have said Sahil was an investor in MicroAcquire, and we are both investors in MicroAcquire.
Nice. Very
Andrew, if you want to introduce yourself and do any plugs, do so now.
Yeah, I'm an investor in your rolling fund too, Ben. So I'm always curious, do I get MicroAcquire stock through you? It's like Inception. There's 5 investors where I'm LPs in their funds, and then anyways. But I'm Andrew Gazdecki. Been an entrepreneur pretty much my whole career, whole life, really. Started with baseball cards, progressively moved to more sophisticated businesses. My most successful business was a no-code app builder called Business Apps. We built pretty much more mobile apps than any other company in the world. At one point, 1 in every 20 apps submitted to iTunes was created on the Business Apps platform. Grew that to about 10 million in annual recurring revenue. And it was a total right place, right time business. I got lucky. I'm not that smart. The iPhone just came out. We were so early, we almost made a BlackBerry version. So glad we didn't do that. I also live by the BlackBerry office. So I see the lights on and I'm like, maybe I should buy some stock. They're scheming up there. And then after that business was acquired, I sold it to ESW Capital, all cash transaction. I've talked about that on some other podcasts if you're interested in hearing kind of the details of that. But that was kind of my holy shit moment. Changed my life. And after that, for some reason, I thought, hey, why don't we start a blockchain trading company? So I started a company called Altcoin. Our differentiator was, it was going to be a decentralized Coinbase, but we were working on what's called, I don't know if anyone's in crypto, I'll keep this short, but we were working on layer 2 scalability solutions. So transactions, when you send tokens on the Ethereum blockchain, would be instant. We were going to a framework called Plasma. And then the SEC came out with hey, if you launch this, you're going to jail. And we're we love crypto, but not that much. So we tucked that into a company called BNK to the Future, so they can launch a security token exchange. And then after that, I had a short stint at a company called Spiff. ran their sales team, marketing team, helped them grow from like 0 to 2 million. And then once they raised their Series A, I left, started focusing on MicroAcquire full time. MicroAcquire, for those that aren't familiar, it's a startup marketplace that helps startups buy other startups. It's kind of the most Silicon Valley thing you could possibly create, and having a blast running it. And I also do have a book coming out too. It's mostly a story about me building business apps. I was 21 when I started it, 29 when I sold it. It was really weird and kind of surreal. So I kind of like wrote down, I had like a small journal and I compiled that all in. It'll be completely free. So if you want that, just scroll through my Twitter feed. I have like a type form. I'll probably reshare it, but I'm just hoping to, it's not a book on like, hey, this is how you can build a huge company. It's like, hey, this is how I did it. Here's all my mistakes. So that's me.
Awesome. I wonder how much of a bad time you would have had, and which would have been worse, making that BlackBerry app or being in jail for the crypto app?
Being in jail for sure. The BlackBerry thing came pretty close, because we started with just iPhone apps, and then Android started to pop up, and we noticed that had more promise, and the tooling was a little better. Like building apps on BlackBerry literally was like a disaster. No one knew how to do it. We actually made like a small MVP and we were like, this is bad. So I'm gonna say I'd rather go to jail than build a BlackBerry app. Sorry if anyone still owns a BlackBerry.
Awesome. Well, yeah, let's go into sort of the format today. We're going to try and go through the whole life cycle of ideas, the building, preparing to sell, and then selling. And then we'll sort of cross like post between different things and try and pull in different questions that people are submitting. If you're going to submit a question, please use the Q&A tab at the bottom of your Zoom, and we'll be able to see them all there. We had a bunch of questions when people were registering for this about how to come up with ideas. And I know that I feel like there's so many places where that question is answered, or at least alluded to an answer on the internet. But I know that I was the idea guy for so long because I just couldn't build anything because no code wasn't really a thing. But what would you guys like? What's your go-to answer when someone asks about ideas? I know mine, I sort of have a few where I would say, go listen to the My First Million podcast, because that you can hear people coming up with ideas and how they think about, oh, that's a cool, interesting business model, like use it for something else. And then there's like a few different posts. I think First Round had a post yesterday, 12 frameworks of coming up with ideas. And then I always tell people, especially in the cohort that we run, people always come and say, oh, this is like the big business idea I'm trying to launch. And then they've been in that phase for like 18 months, 2 years, and haven't ever built it because they need it to be perfect. It needs to be the perfect tool, all of that sort of stuff. So I start sort of encouraging people to build stupid ideas or silly things for their family, anything that's like really small and local to you, just to get those reps in of like building, shipping stuff. But Sahil, let's come to you first and see what would be your like go-to answer for people looking and thinking about ideas? Should they be even thinking in that frame of mind or something different?
Yeah, totally. I mean, my go-to is, you know, just pay more attention to your own life, right? Like think about the services that you already pay for, go through your bank statement, your credit card statement, look at all the businesses that you are a customer of, and like make a list, stack rank them. There are some amazing products in there, presumably, and there are probably some terrible ones too, right? Everyone has like the startup sort of, you know, horror stories of, or like, you know, the PayPal freezing, or like, there's just so many. I mean, unless you live like a really sort of perfect life, like you're hitting what I call in the book, like toe stubs all the time, where you're like, oh, I want to do something, and then I can't. And then you kind of move on with your life. And I think that sort of the people who are sort of generative on an idea basis are like the ones who are able to like notice that, right? Like, oh, like I wanted to do something, I wasn't able to do it. That's what led me to building Gumroad. I wanted to sell something, I wasn't able to sell it. So I made it easier for myself, right? So just really paying attention to that. I also often tell people to like go through their Google search history, right? Like Google is literally full of you asking for help, trying to solve a problem that you have. You can even, preface it with like how, filter all your Google searches that start with how to X, how to cook chicken, or, whatever, like, and you'll have a list, literally hundreds per week, probably, of like different problems that you've literally told somebody that you have. And so I really think it's really important to focus, especially in the beginning, just focus on solving your own problems, because you need to know if you're solving it, which, it's much easier if you're the one you're solving it for. But the other, I think, more important thing is to just pick something. Like, it literally doesn't matter, like, just pick an idea, build it, and going through the cycle, like writing your first book, you need to go through it to have actually to like know how to even write it in the first place. Like your first business is not going to work. It's just not, right? And so you just don't worry about it. Just like get to your second business. Like the goal of your first business is to like get to your second business. And I think that mentality, I think it will like lead to, lead to the next great companies. And often when you think you're working on your product or your business that you think you should be working on, along the way, you'll realize like, oh, it's actually this other thing. You run into something else that you find more compelling, more interesting, but the only way you ever saw it was by starting on something else, so.
Yeah. And I think that's that like analysis paralysis of people procrastinating to not do that one idea because they're worried that it's not going to work or something. But that's, again, the same framework of just do something, like get the reps in, because you'll like quickly figure out different parts of that. And like you said, there's something around being in that framework of being able to come up with ideas, or being able to notice ideas or see ideas elsewhere.
But the way you see them better is by like trying to build something, right? Because that's what gets your muscle memory kind of going on I think building that mental model of like, is this a problem worth solving? Like that all happens just by not by just you analyzing or just by listening to podcasts, right? But by actually kind of like picking one and kind of seeing how far you can get with it.
Yeah, definitely. Andrew, what about you? What do you think? What's your sort of standard go-to answer with when people ask you how to come up with ideas or good ideas?
I'm kind of in the camp that ideas are worth zero, and then execution is everything. You can literally just copy businesses and just carve out a little niche. Like my previous company, Business Apps, we had 3 different companies copy us end-to-end, bugs included, which was kind of funny, like weird terminology in our code base that they just completely ripped off. And now are some are multi-million-dollar businesses. But like where I would look at products that you use, and there's probably like small feature sets, like, or, little parts of the product that you use like a lot. That could be a whole product for you to build. So I like Sahil's suggestion, change your world before you look to change others, because you'll have unique insights into, what should this product look like? How do you like, would you use it? And then from there, in terms of like, I'm all about validating ideas before moving on them as well. Like just think of something and then just throw a landing page up and then just drive some Google ads to it, get those leads, and then call those people and just describe your product as if it's already available and see the reaction, get their feedback, like talk to them. Jason Lemkin wrote a really good article about before you launch a startup, do 20 interviews with potential customers. I really like that approach. Just talking to potential customers. Like another example I'll give for MicroAcquire, and this is kind of a cop-out answer, but follow something you're passionate about as well. Like I wrote down the customer that I wanted to serve first. That was the start of MicroAcquire. I didn't know what it was going to be, but I wrote down entrepreneurs and startups. And so AngelList was already taken. They had, investing down, product done, had discovery down, but there's nothing for acquisitions. And I was like, this could be fun. And that's another key thing for me is, if you're going to be going and launching a startup, make sure that you love it, because it is so fucking hard to compete against someone who loves what they're doing. And so if you're not truly passionate about it, there's someone out there that is, and they're gonna probably, take it a little farther than you. But yeah, I would look at larger companies that have, just features where they're just features where you can pull that out and maybe build upon it a little bit more. I really like that approach. And then also understanding that your first business doesn't need to be a SaaS company. It doesn't need to be you can just launch an agency and then just say, hey, we build products, or I do XYZ. And then if you notice a pattern, like my clients keep asking for XYZ, you can productize that service, and then you could build that into like a piece of software. So that's kind of how I think. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah. I'm definitely with you with the like build it and put it out there as if it's almost already a big company that is running and doing that. And that's, I mean,
let me add, can I have one more thing too, just as like a real world example? So Business Apps was not the first no code app builder. We've been disrupted 100 times. It's, we were early to the market, but there was other app builders in the space, and this is how I came up with the idea. So I noticed that all the other app builders were focusing on like build an app for a blog, like build an app for, your podcast, like nothing specifically focused on businesses. And so I thought, okay, so like this piece of software exists, but it's not targeted at the right customer base. And so we were the first business to really say, hey, these mobile solutions can be applied to small businesses. And then there's all these do-it-yourself website builders. What if we just had that same model, but for, mobile apps? And that was the ideation for Business Apps. So, you can kind of, borrow like a great quote from good old Pablo Picasso. Good artists copy, great artists steal. We kind of did a mix of that with Business Apps. So, you can look at larger companies and they might have, again, like little areas or positioning in the wrong area, and that could be, a substantial business.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, we like with MakerPad, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just knew I couldn't code and I wanted to build something. So building stuff without code and building different types of things was like the perfect thing for me to be able to do. And it turns out that people wanted to watch that. And I didn't invent the screencasting business, the tutorial business. I just borrowed that from like other companies who were doing similar things. So yeah, interesting to see different like approaches there. With building of companies, what have you seen, or what like are there any themes recently? I feel like there's a new wave of entrepreneurs. There's like this creator economy. There's individuals who now have people like Lenny, who has his newsletter, which is like content business, and there's like a job board, and then there's a course. Sahil, you're probably in the same sort of vein, right? You've got Gumroad as a product, you've got a book, you've got a course, you've got a bunch of different things. How do you see that as different to what previously people like? It seems like people used to be a developer, write code, you build a product and you ship it. And these days things are more fluid, I think, and maybe no code tools have a big pull there. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, I think definitely no code sort of plays a huge role in this sort of, galvanization of this kind of these new online entrepreneurs and creators. But it's a trend that's been happening for a long time, right? Like, I don't know, 50, 60 years ago, you worked for one company your whole life, right? Like two generations ago, right? And then one generation ago, you maybe worked at like a company every 10 years or something like that, but maybe in the same city. And so, this sort of the career is kind of getting unbundled over time. And now you've gone to a point where you have people who are doing multiple things at the same time, right? There's like sort of these memes where you can now work from home, which means maybe you can work for two companies at the same time. Because no longer does that sort of the office have a monopoly on your body, right? Which is kind of like a physical bottleneck. But it's the same trend, which is you don't have to go to school. You don't have to get a degree. You don't have to, there's a free market. Anyone can tap into it. You just need a phone and a laptop and some internet, and people can give you money People can follow you, give you influence and power. And there's frankly like no real excuses at this point, because anyone can build social capital, anyone can build knowledge capital, anyone can build financial capital by selling a product to a market. There's basically no gatekeepers if you can avoid them, you know. And that means that, for example, investing is no longer a real job. Like, I don't believe investing is a real career for anybody. It's a thing that everyone can do, anyone can do. And you're seeing it happen now with crypto and retail investing and all these other sorts of things. And I think the same thing with writing. Before, writing was a job, right? Like, you went to school and then you worked at a newspaper if you wanted to be a writer. Now anyone can do it. And so that's just happening for literally every single job, right? Like, law and medicine are probably last to happen, but like also kind of seems inevitable to me over a long enough time horizon. Like, why can't I be a dentist on the side? Like, it's not that hard to clean teeth or whatever. It'll happen. It will happen. And people are like, oh, no, you need a certification. And I'm like, you needed a certification to be a taxi driver. Now you don't. You needed a certification to run a hotel. Now you don't. Like, technology can solve these problems better than politics can and regulation can. That's the point of technology, actually, is to remove trade-offs instead of, try to kind of, politics is about trying to resolve them. Technology just skips them completely, So anyway.
Someone's saying gonna start a dentist side hustle this weekend.
Do it.
Do it. I'll invest.
You won't do it. That's the thing. There's your idea. But guess what? 99% of people won't actually follow through.
I'll give you 10K if you do it. Shoot me an email, andrew@microacquire.com. But I guess I'm going to piggyback off of what Sahil was saying is it's never been easier to start a company. Everyone has it. So yes. Okay. It makes more competition. Like, okay, that's an excuse in my book. Like, just remove all excuses. So when I started business apps, my previous job was at Sears, and then I got fired from a graphic design job. I had no sales experience, I had no marketing experience, no leadership experience. I'm also not a technical founder. I don't know how to code. I don't have access to the MicroAcquire servers. My team does. And at business apps, they took them away from me like 3 years in, because I was pushing code on production with the team. But I learned everything. Just I wanted it so bad that there's so much information online about how to start a blog, how to start a SaaS company, how to start an e-commerce company. There's full courses on these things. So I would just really encourage everybody to understand that, like Sahil said, there's truly no barriers aside from ones that you put up for yourself. Like, if you say, like, I don't know how to code, I can't do this. Okay, well, full stop. Well, you're not going to start a company then. But if you learn how to manage, like, one thing I say when it comes to technical is, instead of learning how to write code, I recommend learning how to manage engineers. That's what I did, at least. But just, there's been such like a proliferation of like people sharing what works. Like, in 2012, we didn't know sales go-to-market models. We didn't know like the marketing playbook. But now everybody has it at their fingertips. Like, webinars like this are great. You can go on Twitter and just follow either of these two amazing individuals and learn a ton. So I would just say, like, just get after it. Like, just start moving, because like, when you make mistake, like, success is kind of directly correlated with experience. And to get experience, you need to make mistakes, which means you need to like start stuff. So you can start like a crappy business that fails, but you learned. And trust me, I have a graveyard of businesses I started that didn't work out, but I learned along the way. So I don't even know if I answered your question, Ben.
No, I think it's good. Yeah, I mean, the whole.
I forgot what it was. But I really liked
No, it's good
at SHL's answer. So
yeah, I mean that's why we've got the course that we have. Is like, you need to start doing something. It doesn't matter what it is, just start doing something. So our course makes people physically build projects in
dentist side
You're done.
hustle on the weekend. I'm gonna hold that. I'm gonna find you, and I'm gonna hold you to that, man. Like I want my teeth clean.
Exactly.
I'll be your first customer, man.
But I think like what you said is, I mean, on my card account, one of the tools I use, there's like 350 websites there. It doesn't mean I was trying to like launch them all, but it's just they're the reps of doing something. And I think looking like scrolling through some of the Q&A, what people have asked questions on, often it's just something that hasn't been taken action on, so they don't know, or there's nothing else to like follow it up. So a few of them would be like, how do you go about pricing? How do you like get the fear of starting? How do you like do one idea? How do you deal with competition? I think they fall into what we've all just said is there's so many things on the web, podcasts, videos that do answer these things, but I think that it might be people don't want to hear those answers. So they keep asking the same question. It almost becomes that procrastination of, but if I just want to find the perfect answer for pricing or competition, then I will finally go and start my thing. But actually, you like I don't know that I know any more than any of you or anyone else in this like whole workshop. I probably don't. I'm just figuring it out as I go along, and I'm very open about that. All my pricing was made up. Competition just happens, and you just have to deal with it at the time. And I think it's just that whole the action is the only thing you can do. You can read all day, you can listen to podcasts all day, you can watch videos all day, unless you've actually done something. You've put your website up, you've tweeted it out to people, you put it on Reddit, whatever, you're not going to know or learn anything because you must have read the same articles we have. You must listen to the same podcast. It must be like all of those.
I'll tell you the easiest thing you can do if you really want to just start. Literally everyone listening to this is getting paid. Like someone is giving you money to solve a problem. Like that is already happening, right? I hope. The majority at least. And so literally just do that for people who you don't work for. Boom, you have a business, you have an agency. You'll be forced to do so many things, and then you'll have all the muscle memory to solve, more different problems.
Yeah, like another example of that is I had a friend recently. She was SDR manager at a company, and she left. Now she's doing SDR management for large sales teams, and she's loving it. And she's like productizing it and like turning it into a course and as a community. But Google is like, people are always asking, like, I get comments on Twitter that are like, how do you find customers? And my answer is always like just like figure out who you're going to sell to and then just research them online. Like Google can be like your number one mentor for your startup. There's just so much more information available than there was a decade ago that right now, I think the biggest barrier to starting a business is just excuses. It's just get out there and do something. Like when I say I'm going to do something, I just do it, and it might fail, and I'm okay with that. And I think when you accept failure, like you accept one mental framework I always like to work through is what's the worst that can happen? Like what's the worst that can happen? If you're going to literally go all out on SaaS and the worst that can happen is you go bankrupt, maybe don't do that. But if it's something like, hey, I have this side hustle, I want to get it to replace my salary, I'm going to do it on the side, like get moving like as soon as possible, because it takes time to build these businesses, and the longer that you research, ask questions, I guess to summarize what I'm saying is, the get shit done founder beats the perfectly planned strategy founder 100 out of 100 times, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think, I'd agree with that. There was someone tweeted like the other week, on this day, Airbnb launched X many years ago. But then I think one of the founders of Airbnb said, yeah, but this was actually our third launch. No one remembers the other two. And it's the same thing of like every product you've ever launched that didn't work, no one really pays any attention to. Like all of the things I've launched, luckily, no one remembers. They only remember MakerPad because that's the only thing that is currently working and has worked. And I think people probably don't like hearing that the answer to most of the questions anyone asks about entrepreneurship or starting your own business is do something. Like it's that annoying thing to hear, but it's like the common thing that everyone who's actually built a business or has run something says. Like everyone has just said what you have said and I have just said, which is like, you've got to just do something. You've actually got to build it. You've got to launch it. You've got to put it out there.
Yeah, and another thing I'd recommend too to like really kind of drive that point home is check out this thing called Website Archive. Have you guys heard about that?
Yeah.
Look at any of our companies, any company that you admire, and find the first version of their website. It probably looks terrible. Like they did not launch with this polished, thing. They started with an MVP and then they talked to customers and then they iterated. Really, a successful startup starts with an idea, but it's really just an iteration of that idea over and over and over and over and over by speaking with customers. So the sooner that you can create a connection with customers, the faster you're going to get towards, building a successful business. That's why I'm always like, just get it out there, get it out in the wild, tweet about it, even if it's like an idea you're not even sure about, just get feedback and then just get moving. Kind of repeating myself, but I just want to really drive home, just, start making moves, like stop thinking and just start doing, because it might lead you into something that like changes your life.
Yeah, I agree. But now someone's found the first version of MakerPad, which I've got to try and scrub from the internet, but that's fine.
If it's on Website Archive, good luck.
Yeah, it is. Awesome. So let's sort of move from the building piece, because I think there's this one theme, which is like, just to make like actions, just do something. You've got to start there, and then move into like the selling side of things. Because I think, to me, when I first started MakerPad, I was like on this normal startup train of, okay, cool, one day I'll get into YC and then I'll go and raise a bunch of money, then I'll have 500 employees and then I'll be successful on TechCrunch, and that's just how startups work. And then it all went to shit, and I started it again and did it a different way, the sort of bootstrapper way that we are all very familiar with. And Sahil, I know you've got a similar story on a different scale to me, definitely. But how do you think like the landscape now has changed when there's different, like we said about these new creators who have different business arms? There's different funding options like Calm Fund. There's places now to sell your startup, no matter if it's 5 figures, 6 figures with MicroAcquire. How do you think the landscape's changed and how people view what starting a business and selling one actually is? Because now it seems like there's a path. There's almost like a checklist you can start checking off to get to that place of, I've started something, I've sold it. Sahil, what do you think?
Yeah, there totally is. And, maybe 10, 12 years ago, you had to go through Y Combinator and they would teach you a bunch of stuff and it was useful. And that's just not true today. Like Y Combinator puts all their content up on the internet for free because guess what? They need people to know who they are. The next generation of founders, the best way to do that is just to help them for free. And then, they'll apply. By the way, like Harvard, Stanford, Yale, like Columbia, they all put you can take a $50,000 a year education for free if you have the motivation to. It's all on the internet. That's how I learned iOS development, was just for free on the internet, and yeah, so there are kind of playbooks. I think you can, generally people who are somewhat successful have been on a podcast. You can listen to it and literally just like map out what they did to get to where they are. And it turns out they failed to build 3 businesses and they tried this and they did this. And like, it's very rarely like sort of a linear path. And even someone asked in the kind of the chat, like, what are some consolidated resources for founders, right? And it's like, you're asking the wrong question, right? Like, that's like saying, hey, I want to write a book. Are there consolidated resources in how to write a book? Like, not anything good, because everything good is going to be specific to the problem in front of you. And if you don't have a problem in front of you, why do you care about what resources you're trying to find? Like, I'm not going to go read about, like, I've never read about business, right? Like, you don't need to buy my business book to know anything about business. It might inspire you, but I guarantee you your experience and the value you're going to get from it is going to be 1,000 times more if you're actually building a business, because you'll be able to apply everything that you learn to what is in front of you, which is much better than just like YouTubing. I used to do this. Like, I tried to learn how to code by just watching people learn how to code. And guess what? Didn't learn how to code. And then I learned how to code by literally watching someone code and then copy pasting every single thing they did into my screen. And then I had a thing, so it's just really, putting yourself through the motions. And there's so many examples of people who've done it that you can really there is kind of a playbook now, but I'm sure Andrew has more thoughts.
At SHO, what was the question again?
Maybe Ben can re-ask it, but basically, like, how do you, like, is there a standardized kind of playbook, I think, for starting a company? Was that right, Ben?
Yeah. So like, I feel like there is a standard.
No, I just want to throw that out there to get. I'm trying to get you more followers, man. But I agree with everything Sahil's saying. Where again, there's just so many resources online that you can tap into to emulate maybe someone else's success. Everyone's openly sharing their journeys now in terms of building companies, like from the start. Like, this is kind of what it looked like. This is where I'm at today. This is what I'm focusing on. Find those people and follow them. They're probably not that much farther ahead of you. And so by following people, this could not only like inspire you and motivate you. So I think building businesses, it takes so much motivation. Like, you have to really, 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 really want it. Like, if you like aren't making moves, then you just aren't there yet. And if you paralyze yourself with just I need the perfect idea, I need the perfect playbook, like, you're never gonna make progress, in my opinion. I think I'm in complete agreement with Sahil in terms of, like, starting a business is like the ultimate business MBA. You'll learn so much about not just yourself, but you'll make mistakes. You'll go through the ups and downs. You'll be stressed out all the time. You'll learn how to manage your emotions as a founder. Potentially, it'll lead you into, like, another example I'll bring up from personal experience was, again, with business apps, where that business wasn't meant to be like as big. I didn't build like the biggest business, but it was bigger than I thought it'd be. I originally started that business as like a cheap agency where I could build like semi-custom apps for restaurants, where basically my only goal was to not get a job. And then I was like, whoa, okay, maybe we can like make this a do-it-yourself thing where we can partner with like web agencies and public companies. And then it turned into this like rocket ship. But like, I took that initiative in terms of like, hey, this looks like an opportunity. I don't want to get a job. Let's move. And I made a ton of mistakes on the way. I didn't like, that should have been like, like 100 million plus company, but or $1 billion company, because there's others in the space in that range. But I learned so much, and I'm able to apply that to new businesses. So my best advice is just start something. Like, you'll have fun, you'll learn a lot. And then if you fail, like, you can apply that knowledge to your next business. Because yes, I also have a graveyard of businesses that I've started before business apps, before Altcoin, before MicroAcquire, that all failed. Like, they never took off. But I learned things like how to set up a website, like how to run Google ads, like how to market, just, the general like sort of basics of getting a business off the ground. So yeah, I'm just going back to, get after it. Like, I feel like Tony Robbins up here, but it's true.
You said about like business apps not being the $1 billion company. Don't you think that's part of the issue, or it was the issue of people thinking that it has to be like that? I think for me, like starting and selling companies, so I feel like it's okay to think I'm going to sell this one day, and I think that's why one route we didn't take at MakerPad was go back to VCs and raise a bunch more money, because I didn't want to pretend we were trying to build like $1 billion software company when that's not necessarily what we were trying to do at the time or thought was our sort of plan. I think nowadays, especially with MicroAcquire, the creator economy, it's okay to think I'm going to learn how to like run businesses. Maybe they're smaller, but maybe I'll have a few exits. I'll sell a few side projects. One will be 6 figures, one will be 5 figures. And it's more like the job is being the business operator and trying to do things like that. And it's not necessarily go big or bust. There's more options now.
Yeah. And this might be a good set. Someone was commenting like, let's talk about selling businesses. So this might be a good segue.
Yeah.
But for business apps, so I bootstrapped the company, if you want to debate that. I raised $100,000. I don't know if that counts, but whatever. Turned down a ton of VCs, tons. Did the whole road show, met with Excel, Sequoia, Endurance, I don't, just all the names, and turned them all down. Like, I thought I'd love to sell this thing for 8 figures. Like, I'm cool. Like, I don't need to build $1 billion unicorn. Like, I'm good. Like, and I think a lot of you would be as well. Trust me, like, you don't need a lot of money. That's why there's this like narrative in Silicon Valley that drives me crazy, which is like, in order to be successful, you have to like build a unicorn, raise a bunch of fucking venture capital, have TechCrunch like rewrite your press release. Like, no, like, trust me, if you build a business and you sell it for like $1 or $2 million, like, that's going to change your life, unless you're a psychopath and you need like a private jet and like a yacht. And some people are on that trajectory, and that's badass, and I respect that too. But for 99% of entrepreneurs, like, you can build businesses where you don't raise capital, and by not raising capital, it leaves the optionality for exits exponentially wider. Because when you raise venture capital, VC-backed deals are so much harder to get done, because the number of constituents involved in a deal increases deal complexity exponentially. So when you're venture backed, you have your lead VC, then you have your VC's partners, then maybe you have a second VC firm, and then you have a third VC firm. You have to get approval across all of them, and then you have your founding team, blah, blah, blah. But if you're a bootstrap founder and you just, grow it to, a few $1,000,000, you can sell that for like 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe $10 million, and you're set. Like, literally set. Buy a house cash, put it in Vanguard. Don't look at it until you're 70, and then go do something super fun with your life. Like, that's what I think more entrepreneurs should be focusing on doing, because it's more realistic. Statistically, your odds of success are way, way, way higher. Kind of a rant. It's all in there.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think, some people are talking about in the chat about what is involved in the selling. And I'll talk about my experience from what I can mention. And feel free to jump in with your guys' experiences of what you've seen. And I know that, like, Andrew, you've seen and helped a bunch of startups sell. And Sahil, I'm sure you've seen. I mean, obviously you were a MakerPad investor and saw stuff from that side. But for me, it was like, it came out from a tweet, like, randomly. Often I see these conversations happen from, like, let's talk about partnering. And Zapier was a partner of ours early on, and then just saw things that we were doing. And I think for us, there was definitely a path for, that was our best, like, that was the best goal for us, was to find someone like Zapier who we could sit like beside or underneath and be building with someone like that next to us, rather than go that VC route. And it was fairly like arduous process, more so like stress-wise, mentally. It just felt like this huge thing that was going on, which was a huge thing, but it was like 5, 6 months. It's the most important thing, like, for the founder. That's the most important thing you're doing every day, all day, is thinking about this sale, trying to get it over the line, trying to work with lawyers, trying to understand what the fuck people are talking about half the time. And it's like, I found it really beneficial to have someone explain everything like I was 5, like, explain all the simple, everything complex into simple terms. And what I really found helpful was that Wade and I would talk separately through the process. So we were like, right, are we understanding what we want, like, from each other, and what the big picture is? Like, the lawyers get stuck in the details and going back on certain terms, back and forth, arguing certain points. And I thought that as long as Wade and I were sort of aligned on what we're talking about, we know that the lawyers are just trying to push the deal in that direction. And I thought it'd be so simple because the company hadn't been going on long. We didn't have loads of contracts and we didn't have loads of these extra things. We tried to automate as much as possible with Zapier tools and other things inside. But I feel like it must be the same as every other sale of a company. Like it took 5-6 months. It went down to like 5 minutes before the deadline, before things could have completely crumbled. And everything was just as I've read or as I've heard other people talk about. And I wonder if is selling, like that is the process of selling from my experience. I don't know what the process is. If Sahil, you've seen anything similar, what have you seen?
Yeah, basically it's kind of a shit show every time, because, you know, lawyers are risk mitigators, right? And there's a lot of risk involved in buying a business and liabilities and all sorts of stuff. And so it's just, yeah, it definitely is easier. Like bootstrapping, as Andrew mentioned, the cleaner the cap table, the easier you're gonna have. But even I think in the simplest case, it's still gonna be, you know, a multi-month process generally. Lawyers will be involved on both sides. Like it will take time to figure out, you know, and which is why I would say, like, don't pursue it unless, you know, you really feel like you're in a good spot. You really want to do it. You have all the answers to the questions you think people will be asking. MicroAcquire is kind of like this very new thing where you can actually kind of like have, it's kind of like it's turning outbound sales into inbound marketing, where you can actually kind of like get people to reach out to you, which I think is way better, you know, than the other way around. But yeah, I've seen every acquisition I've seen go down, that I've invested in or otherwise, it's always been kind of like every situation is also kind of bespoke too. So it's not like you can just copy paste automate acquisitions. Like every deal seems to be kind of different right now. I'm sure MicroAcquire will also kind of do a lot to kind of standardize some of these things as well. Like safes right now exist in funding rounds, which have kind of like 10x or 100x to kind of like how easy it is to raise money at an early stage from all sorts of people and to invest on the other side, right? But that's like a 9-10-year-old invention. Before you had to spend $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 on lawyers to raise $1 million, right? And do a price round and kind of herd all the cats. And so my guess is over time, a similar thing will happen with acquisition as well.
Yeah, and one thing you mentioned was like, what if people don't come to you? I know MicroAcquire is definitely one of those, like that sort of almost solves that thing, because you don't want to go and approach someone to say, hey, you should buy me because we're so good, because that feels like you're sort of shifting the power into their hands, rather than the way it happened for us was sort of the power was almost in my hands because they'd approached us. So Andrew, I wonder what you think about, obviously people are listing their own startups. Do you think it's changing how people are perceiving to buy a company that way? Or do you just think that's just the way things are evolving now?
Yeah, good question. I would say the biggest change I've seen is the buyer pool for acquisitions has increased dramatically since I sold business apps, as a personal example. My best advice if you're looking to sell your business is to educate yourself end to end on the acquisition process, because when you go to the buyer table with, you know, private equity firm or a strategic buyer like Zapier, it's Tuesday for them. Like, but for you, it's like the most life-changing thing that could possibly happen. So understanding the difference between an asset sale and a stock sale, or the legal steps, what is due diligence, what to expect. When I sold business apps, I was very clear on my terms. I wanted an all-cash deal. I wanted you to stock purchase agreement so I could benefit from QSBS. We had $2 million cash on hand. I demanded that they buy that cash because adding cash onto the purchase price would tax me at 13% instead of dividending out and being taxed at 40%. And what that kind of showed them was like, I know what I'm talking about. And so like, if you don't want to, like, we don't need, I sold without an investment bank, sold it completely on my own. I got some light advice from a buddy, more or less just like, hey, should I send this email? And he's like, no, dude, go to bed. Because, you know, there's a lot of emotions, like, you know, like, to add SHL's comments. Like it can be a shit show, definitely emotional. But educate yourself, like, and then, prepare as well. Like, one thing I wish I did at Business Apps was just organizing everything. Like I had to gather all my NDAs. I had to like every contract I had signed. That was a total pain in the ass. If I just had a data, like if you're building a business ready to go, if you've accepted any, capital, you've kind of, put yourself in a position where your only outcome is to get acquired or maybe go public. So having just kind of like slowly building up a data room if you never need it, just so when someone like Zapier reaches out, you're like, hey, I got a data room. Like I'm not looking to sell, but if it makes sense for my team and my investors in that order, sure, I'm open. But be willing to walk away, be willing, know what you're worth, have a number in mind always in your head. Mine was always open offers, so that's not really that helpful. But what I'm trying to just get at is educate yourself. There's so much information on how to raise funding, how to grow your startup, but not a lot of information on, the acquisition process. Like what is due diligence? What's an LOI? What's an asset purchase agreement? How do earnouts work? Educate yourself on all of that stuff, because you can get all, stock deal, but, why not get preferred shares so that you don't get, basically crushed down and diluted if they issue more shares and stuff like that. I've seen that stuff happen.
Where would you point people to learn about this process? Like I know there's a book that I looked at briefly, which is called Built to Sell. I know there's another one.
MicroAcquire. I got a full course. It's completely free. I made a full course, like end to end. I go over legal. I go over how to get, how to approach buyers, everything that you could possibly want to know. Just go to MicroAcquire, click the resources tab, or just shoot my team an email. Be like, hey, where's the acquisition course? We're putting it in like Podia right now. It's on YouTube. So go on our YouTube channel. I have a ton of videos. I try to cover like every aspect, but shameless plug. Sorry.
No, that's exactly what we were looking for. I think people want to know that sort of stuff, and what like we can sort of round up the conversation here, and then you can stick around for any Q&A stuff if you've got time. But what would you recommend for folks? Like, what makes something look successful? Be prepared to be a good like company to sell. Like I know that Sahil, you automated like as much as possible. You wrote down every process and tried to just go through one by one, automate everything. What are some other tips to like make your company as sellable as possible?
Yeah. I mean, that's a big one, right? Just take make your business better, right? Like make it more efficient. Like these are things you probably should do anyway. And so make it lean and mean, get rid of all the stuff that you don't actually need. The thing that isn't valuable, if it's not valuable to you, it's certainly not going to be valuable to the buyer. It's just going to scare them off, right? So do all that, write it all down, document all of it. There's like a one pager somewhere that is like a list of all the things that I do, because it's sort of a list of things yet to be automated, basically, right? Like, and it's pretty short, to be honest. Like it's I probably required work to run Gumroad for me is probably 3 hours a week, right? 2 to 3 hours a week. Mostly just approving things, clicking yes, clicking no, replying to stuff. And yeah, so do that. And then, yeah, data room's a great idea. Like have a thing, you don't have to say, oh, this is because I want to sell the business, right? But just, it's useful to have. Like Gumroad has basically had all these resources. Doing the crowdfunding round took 2 seconds for me because I had all the data there. Like I had all the charts there, I just had to kind of compile it and so yeah, data room, even if you're not planning to sell your business, like thinking through it through that lens is a helpful kind of exercise. How much would you buy your own business for, right? Like figure that out for yourself. All those words that Andrew said, like go Google them all, right? Like that's like the consolidated list of resources that I recommend is google.com. Just Google, everything is there. it works.
Co-sign.
They help, they do their job, so and get paid well for it. So yeah,
and I'll echo at SHL, and as I'm gonna check your Twitter account, so I'll see if I got you some more followers after this. Shoot, what was I gonna say?
Yeah, anything to add on the like what makes
Yeah,
what as
just
sellable?
like I get questions all the time, like, hey, I have a SaaS and it's doing like 50K a monthly recurring revenue. What's it worth? That's the equivalent of asking, like, what's the price of a car? Like, is it a Ferrari? Is it a Honda Civic? Like, do you have any things does churn like 50% a year? Like, really understand, like, that it's not that cookie cutter in terms of like, I have 100K, like 100K in revenue in one business is way different than 100K in another business. Same with like 1 million, 5 million, 10 million. It's completely different. But the best advice when selling a company, hands down, is have a good business. Like, you want to have a business ideally that's growing, because if you want a multiple on ARR, typically you need to have a growing business. If you have a flat business, or it's growing moderately, you're going to be priced on typically SEE or profit. But if you want that nice, 5, 10x ARR multiple, you want to be pushing towards growth typically. And that was kind of my scenario. I was running the business at break even. We were profitable for a period of time, but we just kept pushing for growth because there was market share to be had. But then I really started to remove myself from the business. So when we went into due diligence, half the time the questions were like, hey, we have a question about this cohort of customers. Who do we talk to? I'm like, my CFO. We have questions about the architecture of the software. Who do we talk to? My VP of engineering. I have no idea. So I literally was like, I don't know, I turned into like the router within the business. So if you're able to do that, even on like the smaller end too, where basically you have VAs that help with support, you have documented processes. Like, if you're building like a micro SaaS or, a small e-commerce company, like, you can hire really good VAs to help with, all the manual processes that you're doing. So you're working on the business rather than in the business. Because if you're selling a business where you are critical, where if you leave the business and it's going to be really hard to operate without you, that's a very, very hard business to sell. And I see a lot of that on MicroAcquire. So net, have a good business, good unit economics, document things. And then when you go and talk to buyers, if you're really looking to sell, and things start to get different when you're like, 10 million and above, like definitely hire an investment bank, like hire a professional. It's going to be a life-changing acquisition, like you're just leaving on the money on the table if you don't. And we're going to be releasing another plug for MicroAcquire. Sorry, Ben. We're launching this directory where you can hire an investment bank, or a business broker, or an M&A advisor, or an M&A attorney, or even someone to help with accounting or due diligence, all within inside MicroAcquire. So that's coming out at the end of the month. But what was my point on that?
I had someone who did that for me. It was my friend who M&A advisor was like an absolute godsend for me to navigate the whole thing and figure out terms and all the different pieces that were just way over my head.
Yeah,
And
I mean, it's worth its weight in gold. If it's going to be a life-changing transaction, treat it like one. Simple as that.
Yeah, for sure. And something I mentioned about multiples, just from what I've seen, it's usually like between 3 and 5 times is like the standard pricing for as like a SaaS company. And another one I've seen people talk about is if you're doing like the growth thing, like valuing your business based on the growth rate and the market size, you can look at public companies that have a similar growth rate. So you could look at, was it the Bessemer index, which is like technology companies. You can see how they're growing and what type of companies they are. And sometimes it might be multiples of 10x, 25x. So that's, I mean, businesses do go and do sell for that type of stuff, but it is all contextual, depends on the type of business, the churn, the type of customers, like consumer business. It is all relative, but there are a few things that I've just seen to sort of help anchor some of those like prices.
One other thing, I just interrupted you, Ben. I'm so sorry.
No worries, carry on. Let's go for it.
we still friends?
Yes, go for it.
Sorry. One thing that I kind of learned through selling both business apps and altcoin is it sounds counterintuitive. I'm sure, a couple investment banks or brokers might push back on this, but articulate that you want to sell. Like, again, buyers are looking at tons of deals. Like, you're like, sorry to say, but like, you're not that special to most companies unless it's like a very strategic buyer. In that case, also say you're open to doing a deal, because there's nothing worse than someone at corp dev whose whole job is looking at companies to buy. And they're just like, unless you're Slack and you're growing like crazy, and if they don't buy you, their competitor is, and you have this crazy bidding process. There's also a great saying, if you have one buyer, you have no buyers, but articulate, like, I want to do a deal. Like, I'm open to selling the company if it makes sense. That was a mistake I made at business apps, where I kind of played this, like, we're not for sale, but like, if you offer us like $1 billion, like we are, but, when I actually sold the business, I said, yeah, we're open to selling. And we were just very transparent and direct. Like, does this price work? I was like, nope. Does this one work? We're getting close. Yep. And then we started, this actually brings back a memory of something that an angel investor told me. Also be very conscious of terms. Terms can be just as important as the final price. Because when I sold business apps, I had a 90-day transition. So I was out of the business in 90 days. So those are things that you can negotiate. So, like, don't just focus on price as well. Focus on terms, who you're selling to, do your research. Are they a good person? Is it a good firm? Have they acquired companies before? I highly recommend all that sort of stuff. And understand terms can kind of dictate, like, your happiness in the acquisition almost more than the price. Because if you're not an earnout guy and like you get a year in, you're like, hey, fuck this. Like, you're not getting that extra, 3 years of whatever they promised you. So those are just some other things to think about.
Yeah, definitely. I've seen some of that in the questions as well, that like someone has asked me about the motivation for doing the Zapier acquisition, but part of it was like what you just said, Andrew, about who you're dealing with. Like, Wade, for me, was a huge inspirational CEO. He's grown the company like Zapier into a $5 billion company from like hardly any funding whatsoever. And part of the deal and part of what we talked about was how we want MakePad to continue to run and grow. And it's just an independent company. I had the same vision for it, and it was just like, yeah, that sounds like the right vision for this. Let's go and do that.
And one thing I love about like, I was thrilled when I saw your acquisition, man, because, there's like, I feel like there's sometimes a stigma of like, oh, you sold your company, like, oh, dude. But like, what you just did is you just added like 1,000 horsepower to like your business, your vision, and you're running it autonomously. And I assume you got paid for it. Like, that sounds like a win-win-win to me.
Yeah.
So if you find those like strategic, synergies, selling to a company can be one of the best things to do for your business. Like, if you're really passionate about it, kind of like combining forces with another company can just accelerate everything that you're doing. So, never got to say this to you, one-to-one, Ben, but huge congrats on your acquisition, man.
Really appreciate that. Cheers. Yeah, and it was a big thing for me of like, is MakePad in good hands, and what do those hands want me to do with it? So that was big. But yeah, I really appreciate you both jumping on and sort of shedding some light on building ideas, running companies. It's like, it seems like there's a few common themes here of getting shit done. Google stuff, look up MicroAcquire and check out that stuff. Come to the MakePad no code fundamentals course and just like start getting those reps in and building companies, building projects. You don't need to be technical. And yeah, I guess, Andrew, is there going to be, I mean, you're launching new stuff all the time with MicroAcquire. What's the next like thing you're going to help startups do with MicroAcquire? And then we'll come to Sahil.
Yeah, so we're working on a ton of stuff. Everything from, tools to help with like due diligence. We have a tool coming out to help evaluations. So like, what is your startup worth? there's so, like, I've met 100 valuation experts, like they got this formula, but every business is different. So we're going to be piping in real acquisition data from MicroAcquire of closed deals. So you can see, because, the market changes. Like, venture capital a year ago did not look like it was this year, like it is now. And so we're going to be helping entrepreneurs really understand what their businesses are worth, even if you're not looking to sell. Like it's basically going to be like a chart mogul, barometrics type thing. Very simple analytics. We're not trying to, compete with them or anything like that. But we just want to show, connect Stripe. We get an understanding of like your business and how it's performing, and then give you a valuation based on what we're really seeing in the market, not just some formula that, maybe a broker would use or something like that. Like these are real acquisitions, and based on like your business and category and stuff like that. We're also looking to streamline things like an LOI, like, at SHL said, something about the YC safe.
Yeah.
Is your Twitter following just exploding right now, man?
I haven't checked it.
But we want to standardize that, like, just make it easier for both sides. Like, hey, these are kind of some standard terms. It's a non-legally binding contract in most cases. And so we feel like we can streamline acquisitions. We can build a better escrow process, basically an end-to-end platform where you can buy and sell businesses, but then also find advisors that you need. So if it's a larger transaction, you can hire a broker, you can hire an investment banker, you can hire an M&A advisor. So stay tuned. We got some interesting stuff we're working on.
Awesome. That's very exciting. And Sahil, we'll finish with you and any like tips, tricks, things you've seen, anything you want to leave the folks with. I know you've got your book and course that teaches a bunch of this stuff too. But yeah, anything you want to leave us with?
Yeah, if you don't know my Twitter handle, it's at SHL. And yeah,
Follow it. You're literally one of my favorite Twitter followers, by the way.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate it.
You drop fire all the time.
And my pin tweet has like the cover of my book and some info on it. And if you want to read it, like just send me a DM and I'll give it to you. And it comes out October 26th. If you want to pre-order it on Amazon, it'll be on Gumroad soon. Hopefully, once I figure that stuff out with the United States Postal Service. And we have a bunch of awesome stuff coming out at Gumroad. Hopefully August 30th is our date to announce that. Some cool stuff going live. So yeah, exciting times.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I really appreciate it. And a recording will go out to everyone who participated. And yeah, really appreciate both of your time and input on today's session. I know there's lots to cover. We could have gone on for hours. So I know that some things may have been missed, but hopefully everyone got a lot of value out of this. But yeah, until next time, guys, cheers. I'll see you soon.
See ya.
Bye, everybody. Have a great week.